It is by an extraordinary combination of chances that King Bhumibol came to be king of Thailand. His father, Prince Mahidol, was a younger son of King Chulalongkorn, went to school at Harrow, served for a while in the German Navy, and then trained as a doctor at Harvard. In America, he met his wife, King Bhumibol's mother, now known as Her Royal Highness the Princess Mother. She was a commoner who was studying to be a nurse there. They were married in 1920. Galyani, their eldest daughter, was born in 1923. Anand, their eldest son, was born in 1925. Bhumibol in 1927. In 1928, Prince Mahidol finally qualified as a doctor and returned to Thailand. His brother, the reigning king, Prachatipok, was childless. The more senior princes had died, and Mahidol was now heir to the throne. The taboos surrounding royalty were very strong, and it was unthinkable for him to practice as a doctor in Bangkok. So he went north, but there he soon contracted an illness and died when Bhumibol was less than 2. Anand was now heir. In 1933, a year after the coup, and fearful of its consequences, the princess mother went to Switzerland to ensure the safety of her children, Anand now being heir to the throne. The 3 children were brought up and educated in Lausanne. But in 1935, King Prachatipok abdicated and retired to his beloved England, taking a house in Virginia Water. So at the age of 10, Anand, who was in bed that day with a heavy cold, was asked if he would accept the crown, and said yes. They remained in Switzerland, however, till after the Second World War. A close family, the 2 brothers always together. They were brought up to be good at sports and to speak many languages. King Anand studied law, Bhumibol science. In 1945, after the war had ended, King Anand returned to Thailand with the entire family, summoned to return by Pridi, who was now Prime Minister. The princess mother agreed to the family's return for 1 month only because of King Anand's studies, but against her better judgment, the stay was extended for reasons of state. They lived in the Borompimon Hall in the Grand Palace, which had been built in imitation of buildings seen in Europe. On the 9th of June 1946, in the bedroom in this wing of the palace, King Anand was found shot through the head by a Colt 45 which he kept at his bedside. Royal protocol stopped an immediate investigation. There was no sign of an assassin's entry. Was it accident, suicide, or murder? It was in these circumstances that Bhumibol was chosen as king later that day. His first duty was to attend for an hour every day for 100 days in front of the golden urn in which his brother's body lay in state. The body remained in the urn for 4 years. King Bhumibol went to Switzerland to complete his studies and returned in March 1950 to cremate his brother's body. Meanwhile, a long trial was in process. Pridi had organized a commission of inquiry, but found himself rumored as guilty of planning the king's murder. He resigned and fled the country. Finally, on the 17th of February 1955, 3 men were executed for the king's murder. But an atmosphere of doubt remains. Whatever the truth of Anand's death, the event has affected King Bhumibol's whole life. When David Lomax asked him about his brother's death, he found the question most distressing.
After so many years now, how do you believe that your brother died?
The investigation provided the fact that he died with a bullet wound in his forehead. And this thing is, it was proved that it was not an accident or not a suicide. One doesn't know. But what happened is very mysterious because they immediately many of the evidence was just shifted. And then because it was political, so everyone was political. Even the police were political. So it is a fact of that is not very clear. I only know what happened.
When you yourself were there and you ran along when they were in court.
When I arrived, he was dead. Many people wanted to advance not theories but facts to clear up the affair. They were suppressed, and they were suppressed by influential people in this country or in the international politics.
Mourning for the past king must always precede the accession of the new king. But the sight of Anand's funeral chariot must have been a particularly painful memory for Bhumibol to associate with his own coronation, which took place in May 1950. Even his marriage to Queen Sirikit at the end of April 1950, surely one of the most beautiful and romantic of all royal marriages, started unhappily. The king was recovering from a serious motor accident in which he'd lost his right eye at the time they became engaged. They had met when her father was ambassador in Paris, and their courtship had continued in London during his transfer to the embassy there. In her favourite palace in the north, with its gardens created on English models, Queen Sirikit tells of her first meeting with the king.
It was hate at first sight on my side.
Hate at first sight?
Hate at first sight, because he said that he would arrive at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. He arrived at 7 o'clock, kept me standing there and practicing courtesy and curtsy. So it was hate at first sight.
But if it was hate at first sight, what was it at second sight?
Then it was love. Just the ordinary thing you have heard, love at first sight. I didn't know that he loved me because at that time I was only 15 years old and planned to be a pianist, concert pianist.
And then he had a car accident, didn't he? Well, what happened there?
He was gravely ill in the hospital. The police rang his mother and the princess mother came immediately. Instead of greeting her, he produced my picture out of his pocket without my knowing that he had one. And then he said, send for her. I love her, sent for her. I thought of being with the man I love only, not of the duty and burdens of queen.